Welcome back, everybody, to Catching You. I'm your co-host, Rusty Ham. We've given Lacie the day off. She's just finished her collegiate softball career. She is going to be moving on to bigger and better things. She's going to be playing in Puerto Rico, and she's going to be playing in Australia. So she's not done pitching, but her collegiate career is done. But I
High
have a
five to you, Dad. High five.
high five for me, yeah. So my job is done now too. You heard a voice there. She's back. Cheri Naudin from Collegiate Sports Advocate. She's been doing that since 2015.
Yeah, imagine that. Where does the time go?
Yeah. So Cheri, you were on episode 47 and 48. So if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode, Lacie was on that one, but you guys can get a good idea of what that one was. I wanted to get you back on, Cheri, off the air. Welcome, by the way.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you for having me.
yeah, so off the air, I told you a story of how you kind of came to my mind and the recruiting process, right? And it came from the movie Moneyball. And if some of you guys don't know about Moneyball, it's about the A's, and they restructured how they brought people to the team, right? And they were trying to save some money, but they were trying to get a quality players out of that. So the GM was talking to a scout, and the scout is a super old guy, and he's like, "Hey, you're discounting all this experience, hundreds or years of experience. You're discounting it to start this new thing." And Brad Pitt said, "Adapt or die."
I love it. I love it. It's a phrase actually I've said for years. And I came out of corporate America in the technology sector. And if you didn't adapt and die, you died. You have to adapt. And so, if you're asking, like, where has it gone in recruiting? It's crazy. When I first started, there was a couple other companies out there trying to help in the recruiting process, but nobody really getting it done. And I'm a very structured person, so I put together a system. And being an ex-sales and marketing person, if you've got methodology that works, if you understand who your decision maker is and what your purpose is, I kind of use a model: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And the how changes all the time. And then you've got one big component of the NCAA. I've lost track on the NCAA components that have really changed recruiting. But way back, and I've been doing this 10 years now, way back, you used to be able to recruit early. 6th and 7th graders. And some of them are in college now, which is just amazing where the time goes. Nobody thought that was a good idea. But the ability to identify those elite athletes and know that they were just God-given talent, and where they were at when they were 12 years old was amazing, right? I had the privilege of coaching the Romeros and the Knightons and the Cruz sisters and Lauren Chamberlain, but in 10 and under, they were that good in 10 and under. I didn't make them the superstars they are today, but we back in the day would cluster the best kids that you could possibly get on the same team. And I call it everybody put their guns down, right? And if you have to bleep out those, because I'm in Texas, I get it. But people had to put it down and say, okay, if we're going to go out and compete at the highest level possible, we better have the best kids in the nation. And my first, jaunt across the nation, we had state tryouts or state qualifier. You didn't know from week to week if you were going to nationals. The people today just sign up for whatever nationals whenever they want, and everybody gets to go. Please don't
As long as
even
you have the
start
money,
on.
as long as
Don't
you have the
even
money, you're going to
start on that
nationals.
one. We qualified for whatever section, whatever part of the country, whichever tier. Whichever premier, platinum. Whatever you want to call
It's
it.
kumbaya, right? Let's get everybody in.
And so
Money.
literally we qualified as the only 3 spots in Southern California. But we went to nationals. There was one team that wasn't from California. And God bless the PGF, because they said, why are we traveling all the way across the country to play against each other? What is the purpose of this? And so I think, that was a brilliant idea. And then we moved to Texas, and there was maybe 2 teams in all of Dallas, 10 million population, that was really playing travel ball at the elite level. And that was in 2007. And now I could go out to a tournament every weekend. There'll be 150 coaches or teams out there. And somebody said to me, "Oh, there was a lady with a college jersey on," and I won't name the name because I don't want to out the poor soul. I did a TikTok about it. And she was walking around with a clipboard, and I'm like, all you have to do is Google. They're actually playing right now. Okay. They're not out here recruiting, and she's not a scout. I mean, they don't know what they don't know, but they all have big name brands on, running around in every metro. And if only 8,000 student athletes play the game, how can you have that many tournaments across the country and everybody in this belief that, and I don't like to discount that everybody can play the game if they want to. I think, honestly, Russell, I think that's a lie. And I think you're lying to yourself if you think that's the truth, because the numbers don't show that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I try to sell the truth.
Yeah. And Lacie and I talked about it last week that, because I was saying, I was giving advice as a father, be realistic, right? Because we played on Campbell's team, we played on Stith's team. We thought, oh, if we're going to play on these teams, it's automatic. We're going to go to Oregon, we're going to Arizona, we're going to Oklahoma. And we thought it was automatic. And it wasn't, right? Even Campbell came up to us and said, she's only throwing 58. So you're probably not going to get a whole lot of looks, right? And it was true. And even when we were a Stith, we should have left earlier. Right, we didn't because we thought, oh, let's stick it out and see if we get recruited. But it never happened. Right, he never played us, and
But in
she wasn't
hindsight,
ready. She wasn't at that level. She was only
yeah.
throwing 59, 60. On Stith's
But in
team, that's not going to
hindsight,
work.
I want to ask a tough question to a parent who's been there and done that now. Did you land where you should have landed?
Absolutely. To Mike's this credit, he says you're going to go where you're supposed to go. Right. It just we should have made a decision earlier to find another place to go that would advocate. And that's why I love about your program is you advocate for them and you're realistic with them. We talked about it last time on our other episodes that you're realistic with them. Like, if Lacie was with you, you would have said, okay, you're only throwing 58, 59. Here are your options, so to speak. You're not going to Oklahoma. Right.
Yeah, I try
But
to
but
redirect
in our
them, right?
mindset, we were thought we're a bat buster, we're Stith, we're going to Oklahoma. And that not everybody, and that, just like you said, it's like you got to be realistic, right?
And this is something I hear a lot. Trust the process. I say work the process. If you have the right process, you need to work it. But the sad part is everybody's playing by the same sheet of music, right? They're all singing the same songs, which is, kumbaya, and everything will be great at the end. But it is hard to come back and tell this kid, hey, you're only pitching 58 because then I'm going to get her spin rate and her this and her that. And, you're talking to a parent of a pitcher when you get that, movement sells. And I'm like, I get it. But the reality is there's the kids above you. And that's the hard message is a majority of the country doesn't see the elite level that Lacie's seen and that my daughter saw because they just don't play at those tournaments because they cost too much and there's too much travel and there's too much politics and you don't get enough playing time because you got big rosters. Well, that's the game. And that's what it looks like in college. And that's the hardest part that I say I'm advocating for the parents is I help them through the journey. If their kid has the talent and can play on the right team and can go to the right tournaments, then having the relationships with college coaches, I have 665 committed student athletes. And it doesn't mean they have to like me or use me or want to buy something from me. They know I'm going to tell them the truth. And they know my student athletes have been trained with life skills. We do time management. We do accountability skills. I mean, I had training last Sunday and I had 3/4 of my kids not show up. So I sent a little text with the recording and still I have some beeps going on out there, right? And then when their parents come forward and say, I don't understand, and they start to put some pressure or start to complain about the coaches, I'm going to say, well, they had AP classes and they had, playoffs and they're super, super busy. You don't understand.
You don't understand, right?
Yeah, they tell me I don't understand. And they've paid me to help them. So I've gotten better. In fact, I'm going to struggle taking on any 2020. They're going to have to really have a great story for me because this is the most pent up class that I've ever seen in all of recruiting. And it's because you've got the overflow from the COVID years, you've got the fifth years, and the 6 years on top of them. Now my 22s, 20% of my 22s went in JUCO. They just came out last summer. And now that's pushed down another year. So now another layer of, I mean, my JUCO page transfer is already up there, and it's more than I had last year at this time. And then you're going to have the portal, and everybody thinks they can upgrade in the portal.
Yeah.
They don't go in to downgrade.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. I was gonna rewind a little bit because we said adapt or die. So we talked about back in the day, you know, because Lacie was part of that when she was a 7th grader, actually 8th grader. It was wide open. Like, she played with Reagan Walsh her 8th grade year, right? And so Reagan got recruited by Florida, and she committed to Florida as an 8th grader, and she's still there. Which I would say that's an anomaly.
Very few. Yeah, very few.
I think she's probably one of very few that
Well, Greg's
stayed.
daughter.
Huh?
Greg's daughter at Mercado.
Yeah.
She was an early recruit, and she's still there.
Yeah, so there's a handful, but then, you know, then they went into their freshman year and they changed the rules. So the rule's still the same, right? They can't talk to the coaches until their junior year, right?
Yeah, and what it is you can't have recruiting conversations. You can go to camp, you can email and invite them to see you play. They can talk to your coaches, and even that is still, the coaches are very much by the book because everybody's looking at everybody to give them a violation, stick it to the
Right.
man, as I call it. That's my favorite
Right.
phrase of the day. I challenged the rules one time at an NFCA meeting. I said, hey, why don't we do like volleyball and open it up for conversation and interaction so we can do a better job of recruiting the student athletes instead of just on September 1st. We've seen them once at a camp and we've seen them play once, and now we pick them, and you know nothing about the family, you know nothing about their background. And then, you know, the good ones actually go through a pretty good evaluation, but the kids that know what they want and they got that moment without any evaluation, without any advocate, they're saying yes. And then, you know, coach changes, whoop, decommit, or a roster reevaluation, whoop, decommit.
Yeah.
I mean, even you and I were
Coaching
discussing it.
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, another player that we were talking about before the call, and you know, a week before signing day, just let go. Hey, you're not meeting the needs of the organization, so we're just not even going to sign you. And that has always happened, but now with social media and portal sites and podcasts, people are talking about it. I think it's given a sensation that it is better for everybody, and it's not. It's better for a few, but there's always been coach changes. My daughter went to Kansas under one coach and played for a different coach. So it happens, and it happens everywhere. But I think the parents that try to maneuver and manipulate and think that they have all the analysis and all the information because they got a Facebook dad that tells them what to do, or they've been through it enough, they think they know. Well, then if you think you know, then why are you in this situation? Right? I always say it's a red flag, and I looked up to see if I had my red flags with me. They're still in my bag back there. But it's a red flag if you need to go to the portal, and it's a red flag if somebody needs you in the portal. And that's good or bad. I mean, you could have an injury, you could have had, you know, all kinds of things, coach moves. They're still red flags. There's still not that perfect situation. But I think where we're at today, Russell, is it's year-to-year recruiting, and it's
Yeah.
sad.
So
I
let's
don't know
get back
how.
to the adapt. Yeah, let's get back to the adapt or die. So what have you done since, you know, pre-COVID, after COVID? I think most of the changes came after COVID. A lot of the changes. So what have you done to adapt to the new kind of recruiting atmosphere, so to speak?
I call it pivot.
Knowing about the portal, knowing about NIL deals, all that kind of stuff.
I call it pivot. Like, there's two components in my process that have allowed me to adapt or die per student athlete, right? Each of our student athletes has a different plan because everybody's different and what their needs are different. Is over the last 10 years, we've created what we call a decision grid, and it is developed along with the student athlete and the family as we go. And how we do that is at the end of each season, so end of summer in August, our direct clients are going to call, and we get a 30-minute conversation, and we bring all of our information, all of our, you know, camps and emails and everything that's been going on, and we say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, this and that, and each decision grid is different. Lacey's decision grid would have been way different than Shannon's because they're just different players, different team, different capabilities, different offering, academic differences. And then there's you and I talked a little bit about this. There's a parent differentiation too. What is it that the parents are looking for? And unfortunately, I think the parents are way more involved than one that the law allows, right? You've got HIPAA laws or HIPAA laws, whatever they want to call it. You've got all these things, but you have an adult now and you have to parent differently than you did previous. And I was a person who put my arms around my kids and pretty much bubble wrapped them and made their lives as easy as it could be. But when they get there, they've got to manage on their own. So our time management program, our decision grid, and then the end of season and the pivot, now we're planning for the next season and what we're doing. And I have honest and frank conversations. I used to be really bold and say, you can't play there, but I can't really say that, right? Because I don't get to pick. And I would say, well, let's listen to the cues, listen to the silence, listen to the feedback. And now we made a change that was very controversial in my system, and it cost me thousands of dollars to change my website to do this. But there's other sites that would say, Harvard checked in on your site, right? Well, the only way you can capture stuff like that is to make a coach log in. Well, the coaches for 10 years have said, oh, please don't make me log into your site, Cheri. Well, guess what? They don't pay me to do my job.
Right.
And I need that information. I had a coach this morning ask me, well, why'd you change it? And, walk me through it. And I said, listen, what don't you log into? And they go, oh, yeah, I get it. Everybody logs into everything. It's just the way of life, right? And I said, I apologize that you have to do that, but I get a report. And I used to think my student athletes were getting it, but my developer said, no, it's going to you and you only. So I do have the opportunity to say, hey, should I send this to Lacie? Is it just a camp? Is it somebody fishing? Is it somebody like today, a D1 in your area, looked at every single one of my pictures and my picture transfers? Well, I know who can and who can't. And anybody that's close, I'm going to have a conversation with the coach about and try to get them out to see this student athlete. He would usually call me and say, hey, I like this kid. What can I do with it? But I need that information from the website and the logins and the interaction or no interaction. Had this conversation 2 days ago. I said to the mom, well, you're 27. You're on a team that is okay, but you're playing in places that is just okay. But you are playing where these coaches that you're emailing are not going. There is, the big events and the well-attended events. And if you only have 3 coaches on a staff, they can only go 3 places each week. So they're limited to go to a more regional tournament. When you go to a regional tournament, you're going to get regional coaches who can't afford to go to those bigger tournaments. So there's this whole system and logical sense behind the entire recruiting process. So I had this conversation and she said, well, what do? I said, let's shoot at this conference and then let's shoot over here at this division. Not less or better, but let's just shoot around a little bit. But let's stay within a regional fit because we know the big schools aren't coming. Oh, she got 2 emails today.
Nice.
So when you're hitting the right layer where your kid can play, then you can do it. But to organically try it that way, some people say, oh, my kid's only D2. I'm like, how do you know?
Right.
Nobody's
You don't know
come to talk
right.
yet. Right. Yeah.
So what do you think? So you got the College World Series coming up. How many of these young girls, they look at this and they're like, that's where I want to go?
Yeah, they do.
And they're dead set on, now it's Texas Tech because of, Kennedy, right? So, or whoever, right? And they can go, okay, well, if I go there, I can probably get some money with NIL and then, so that's one question. And then the second question is the transfer portal, which we all know it's just crazy. So let's break it down into both. The looking at these colleges on College World Series, okay, and they say, okay, I want to get, and again, they got to be realistic. They think they can go to Oregon. They think they can go to, UCLA, who's, and then the second part of that question is the transfer portal. Why is it being used now? I know in the past it was, there was different reasons. It was harder actually to transfer. You had to come with papers and you had to come with, your reasons why. But now it's just like, So if you can touch on those two. By the way, I wanted to go back to you said listen to the silence. I love that line. Listen to the silence, because we didn't listen to the silence. Right. I explained that when we were on Stiff's team. We didn't listen to the silence. She was sitting during these showcases and we didn't listen to I love that line, by the way. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
and it is hard, and I learned that from a coach who's passed on, and I loved him dearly. He was at Baylor, and he said, "Oh, I can't tell them no. That's your job." And I'm like, "I can't tell them no either,"
Right.
And so I walked over to this family to camp, and I said, "Listen, I know you live in Waco, and I know you love them. I know you've gone to their camps. I know he knows your name, but you saw me just have that conversation with him, right?" And they said yes, and I said, "The reality is they didn't pick you." And it is that time where and the little girl started crying. My heart hurt. And so I thought, okay, in the future, I don't have that conversation in front of the kid. I still say to the parents, and you wouldn't believe some of the pushback I get from some parents. They come back with, well, he's an idiot. I mean, they go hard, right? Because it's hard to hear that your kid doesn't get to go where you want them to go or where you think she can play. And they all, I had a family member say, oh, but he got a hit at a camp. And I'm like, a hit? Okay. Well,
Yeah, it depends on what kind of hit. Was it
yeah, you need a
was it
lot of
200
hits to
was
play
it
at that school.
235 feet, or was it,
Yeah.
a CNI
Yeah.
single, right?
And that's hard for the parents because my own mind would say, oh, but she worked so hard and she'd give it everything. I mean, I didn't understand why my kid didn't make Team USA. She played for Team Mexico, because she wasn't. And my husband would go, there's layers amongst layers within the talent layers. So there's so many layers that you have to deal with, and you have to be good enough to listen and not immediately take any feedback, because not one person's message means that you can't, but it's the amount of listening that you need to do too. And now everything's in a time frame, so you don't have time to mess around and think, well, we'll just get back to work. And well, then why weren't you working earlier? There's just a lot that goes on, and I just think you have to play where you can play, where you're valued. And you have to be willing to listen to that. There's a whole bunch of kids that can above you, and maybe they're crazy, maybe their parents are crazy, but that crazy is worth the risk because the talent outweighs what you bring to the table. So that's a hard message, and my sensitivity is there. I've cried with a couple parents,
Right.
when the message is tough.
All right, we'll talk about the portal then, in your opinion. And a lot of people have opinions, but what's your
So I see the necessity of the portal, but I think the NCAA is not going to like me saying this. I think they were soft on their decision to do what they do, and they go out of their way to make it all 100% in the hands of the student athlete. And I think it has really tipped the scales to be so much in the student athlete's hand that they get to go in without any assessment, without any realization. They do a survey that absolutely every kid that hates their situation goes and just slams the college coach. I think that is an atrocity. We had that in corporate America. I mean, you're not fooling anybody if you wrote something. I know what your issue is, right? But it's just such a uneven process. And yet you'll hear the student athletes talk about, well, my coach this and my coach that. Well, why weren't you having conversations with your coaches, adult conversations with your coaches? So I think communication skills, conflict resolution, and conversations with coach, I know you said that, and the other day I didn't know how to react to it, but I wanted you to know how I felt about it. And can we talk about that? Like, what makes you think that? And, how could I have handled that differently? Because, man, that really hurt my feelings. We're not teaching them to be adults. We're teaching the parents to then go into the administration and absolutely annihilate these coaches and bring in lawyers. And, there's a lot of coaches over the 10 years that have been taken down that maybe shouldn't have been taken down. And I could name a few who really fought for their rights and really won it, but the story never goes away. And that's unfortunate. The TikToks, right? So this is my answer to the inequity. Is a student athlete can write an anonymous survey. They can go to TikTok and make these horrible TikToks about how they've been mistreated. But the employees, which are coaches or employees of a major corporation, they have code of conducts. They have process in which things are handled. If something is brought against you, if I'm bringing something to you, you get a chance to work on it. And you get an evaluation process, you get feedback. But in this world, you're not even allowed to be coached or developed. If something is wrong, they immediately fire you. Somehow, some way, the administration thinks that coaches are replaceable regardless. And yet, at a couple schools, I've seen the same girls get two sets of coaches run off, right? And it's the same cast of characters. Those kind of kids are replaceable. And I think the administration needs to have some kind of code of conduct for the student athletes. And they might sign it on a team code of conduct, but I don't think they sign it at a corporate.
Yeah. Do you think COVID and how some of those rules were lifted, how we treated the kids, with delicate, we were very delicate with kids after COVID. It was just like, and then all of a sudden my wife is a teacher, 7th grade teacher, and she has found that the entitlement that these kids feel that they are entitled has changed completely. And then also the portal is related to the NIL too, right? They'll get into the portal to chase the money, right?
Right.
What's
Yeah.
your thoughts
Well,
on
I'll
that?
go back to the entitlement thing first. I
Yeah,
think I called it a very soft approach. I don't believe the 5th year should have ever been given to all 4 years. I think they should have accommodated, the one class of seniors, because then it just it cascaded down. Well, you didn't give the seniors in high school any, reprieve, or, in fact, it hurt them. It hurt those 24 class, the 23 class, the 22 class, the 21 class. They got hurt by it,
yeah,
right? In the recruiting process. And they didn't care because they weren't NCAA members yet. So I think they did get wounded, but I have to disclaimer here. I'm a baby boomer. That is a different generation. My dad was a football player. You didn't like it? Take a lap.
yeah,
You didn't like it? Suck it up. We used to call it suck it up, Sally. Pull up your bootstraps. What are you whining for? I can make it harder on you. All of those things is real. I mean, they talk about Gen X. You don't know what the baby boomers went through. I mean, we're that group that got paddled in school.
yeah,
So but I'm seeing a change, Russell. I think because of it and how hard it's gotten to be recruited, I think people are over the whining and crying.
yeah,
And I try to help them. I always say, what do you control? What don't you control? And what do you influence? And I do a little seminar with these kids. I've done it for a high school. I've done it for a junior college, because they have to understand what they control and what they don't control and what they can influence. They don't have control over, and back to the pivot and what I've been through and what changes. I can't control the NCAA. I can't control their rules. I can't control what college coaches, who they pick. I can influence. I can bring valuable information and try to share the effects of their decisions, but I don't control it. I don't walk away and say, oh my gosh, I don't control it, so I'm just going to throw up my hands and go cry in a corner. And I think the parents, in my opinion, have to help them and teach them how to overcome it instead of just being victimized by things that happen, because life is one big, huge kick in the teeth. And if we're not teaching them how to overcome it and how to move on, I think we're just enabling. I almost think it's like an enabling thing in a drug addiction, right? You're enabling them to not make it as adults.
yeah. Cool. We're getting towards the end here. What I want to do is, I always chuckle because I always see these parents buy these $400 or $500 bats, right? But they won't invest in their kids as far as maybe some mental health
Right.
people
Or
or
recruiting.
recruiting. That's what I was getting to, which is recruiting, right? They want to save money on the recruiting part because they want to buy a bat or a glove, and they think that's going to help them. And I think also with recruiting programs like yours, there might be some stigma where it's like, oh, she's only looking out for, for with D2s, or D3s, you're only looking at these schools because if I'm paying you to help me get recruited, then it's probably not a high end, now Power Five. It's not Power
Yeah.
Five, Power Four
Well,
conference
I'll
anymore,
sneak
right?
in and say, go look at my commitments.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
think
So
it's
that's
about 62% Division One. I have kids all over the Power Fours because it's their talent level, not my ability. My ability is the same across any student athlete, but it's their talent level, their team, where they play and how they get committed, right? And it's where they can play. And that is 100%. And if a recruiter is not telling you that, but it's the travel ball coaches. Oh, we don't need her. We are XYZ club and we get all our kids committed. And that is not true, because they leave you to go someplace else and somebody else comes in. But yes, the good travel clubs do have a program of some kind of information, and they're all guiding you but it is really, really difficult because their job has gotten more difficult. It is more expensive to run a club now. I'm helping my husband. Our ops person left after 10 years. I'm helping him. 70% of the budget is tournament fees. And you've got to have it up front because you've already spent it. You had to register into those tournaments a year ahead of time. That's not the kids that are currently paying today. So the expense to play at that elite level, and then the competition, there is so much more. Like I said, when we moved to Dallas, there was three teams that played nationally and 5 travel teams. 140 now just in our market. I mean, you just have to do the math that much talent has actually pushed up the talent level. And so it is a lot harder to get those elite level kids because now I tell any shortstop, your competition is not the girl trying to get more time off of you on the field. It's every single shortstop that you're playing on every single field in the nation today. That's who your competition is. You're not the top 10 in the country. You might look good today, but you're not the top 10 in the country. It doesn't matter what ranking system there is.
Yeah, because shortstops, you recruit a shortstop, but then you can put them at third, second, first. You can put them anywhere in the outfield.
It is 100% pitcher, catcher, shortstop.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 most valuable. And
Yep.
it's because of the athleticism and the skill necessary and the value to them. And you have to hit. I did a duet on TikTok the other day. You have to hit. This guy says, hitters hit and hitters hit, hit slow pitches, fast pitches. I mean, hitters hit. And they'll go, oh, that pitcher or that umpire. No, hitters hit. Hitters hit. And once people realize that they do that, so the spin, man, those bats are $500. And then you've got, the uniforms are $600 or $800. I mean, that's in itself is crazy. And then you've got tournament fees, $5,000 to go to these elite end of season tournaments that are the best of the best, $5,000 per team. Then you got the state of play, and then you've got gate fees, and it just goes on. And so it gets pushed down to the individual family. And then you don't have a recruiting plan, and yet you want to get recruited. So then the anger and that anxiety gets put on the travel coach. Well, you didn't play me when that coach was there, and that coach, I wanted that coach to see me, and you didn't play me. It's real contentious, like tears and frustration and expectations. I think I had my mom the other day say, well, my travel coach isn't happy we hired you. He should be thrilled that you hired me because there might be coaches showing up on your sidelines because it's just not as easy. And they have full-time jobs. Nobody's making a full-time living except for the big clubs, right? Might have 1 or 2 guys making the money. But the tournaments make money, but they got 1 million people they got to share it with. Man, it's tough, but it's all coming out of the parents' back pocket. So if you've got to figure out where the investment. I had one young lady say to one of our coaches, we're not going to play this fall. We're just going to go to camps. You just spent my personal fee for the 8 years you would be with me in 1 season of going to camps.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah, so it makes sense because, again, if you're not on the top teams, I'm out in California, so if you're not on, Mercado's, the main team or Greg's team or Stiff's team,
Corona Angels.
You probably don't need a recruiting coordinator, right? Because teams are going to become, the high-end
They say
team.
that.
I know.
But they're not coming to see you. They're coming to see the team, right?
Yeah.
And then, and those, and I know, I love those programs. I have kids on those programs. And, everybody needs somebody that looks out for your individual student athletes' needs. And these coaches, they try their best. They're doing everything to be great teams and play in the right places. They are doing their best. But when the coach comes up, they get really upset that their kid isn't in, and it happens. A pitcher can't pitch every inning.
Yeah, we got, and I told you, sorry, we got lucky going to Greg's team because once we got to Greg, made a few phone calls. Lacie gets a recruiting trip to North Carolina. So, that we were lucky in that respect. Looking back, you would have been perfect for her, right? Because she was 58, 59. Right. She played on some high-end teams, so she was competitive, but she just wasn't getting the looks that she needed. And then I think your program would have helped her tremendously, for sure.
And I'll go back to the high-level kids because on September 2nd last year, I had 12 phone calls. I don't normally get 12 new clients in a quarter. And they were on big teams, high profile. They got the looks. They didn't get the calls. They didn't get that, or they got a call and 10 other pitchers are on that line. And now they go all the way through fall without the next layer and the next layer. And that's the challenge is They're all in on their dream school. They're all in on one or two schools. They're only emailing who they want to play for. There's a lot of problems with that. I honestly have a big compassion, and I've been the speaker at Mercado before, and I've worked many Corona Angel kids. I've worked many Bat Buster kids. But the higher the kid, the more challenge it is. I'm going off to watch one of the best pitchers in the country, 27, who's one of my clients, and she plays for a different club, and I'm not sure that they're going to help. They're going to bring coaches to watch her play, but I don't think they're going to help make the personal match for her.
Right, right. Very cool. Yeah. So my personal piece of advice in recruiting, if you're going to copy and paste emails, make sure you change the coach's name.
Or the font size. I make them copy me and give me a draft first, and I look at it and I screenshot it and send it back. You might want to adjust the font to be all before we paste, because I do teach a template style because I want to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But you got to watch the adjustment.
Yeah, I just like, because there was a few times Lacie got an email back, hey, I'm not coach. So okay. So if someone wanted to reach out to you and maybe, because I'm sure you do, I think you said last time you do like a free consult, and then if they want to join you, okay. So how would they be able to get a hold of you?
Yep, www.collegiatesportsadvocate.com. If they click on Contact CSA, I am the only one that answers that box. I will personally call them, but please put in there that they met you on Catching You, and I did get that set of twins out of Montana from you, and they're darling, and I love that family. And it really means something, because your audience is valuable and they value you, and you're bringing on valuable guests who give them opportunities. We like to support each other, and I always say all hands on deck. Yep. Right? Because that's what it's all about.
Adapt or die, right? Love it.
Adapt or die. Let's go. We're adapting and we're moving forward.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Lace, if you listen to this, Lacie, I love you.
And I love you too. Is that how you do it? Yeah, I love you too, Lace. I'm your biggest cheerleader.
Yep. Thanks, Cheri. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.